Welcome, dear heart. Tonight, two gentle stories will carry you through memory, through silence, and into the safe, steady nearness of God. There is no need to hurry now. Let your shoulders soften. Let the breath fall slowly in and out. You are not alone here. In this space, there is no striving, only stillness, only the whisper of Jesus, reminding you that you are seen, held, and deeply loved. Come now. The first story is waiting. Let it carry you like a soft lullaby toward rest. It was a small kitchen. Not the kind you see in magazines, nothing polished, nothing white or perfect. The wood was worn, the tile slightly chipped, but it was loved. Every morning, Samuel would rise just after the light touched the window pane. He didn't need an alarm anymore. His body, now in its late 70s, knew when to rise. It remembered the hour his wife used to wake. It remembered the quiet of the kitchen before the world stirred. There was a table by the window, a single chair, a faded linen cloth, a Bible, soft with time, and next to it a loaf of bread, always waiting. Samuel had baked that bread with his own hands. Even now, arthritis gently curled his fingers, but still they moved, slow and patient. The dough would rise as he hummed old hymns. The kitchen would fill with warmth and scent and something sacred, not because the bread was perfect, but because it was made with love. And every morning, before eating, Samuel would break a piece, place it on a plate, and wait, not for anyone in particular, not because someone had promised to come, but because once, long ago, someone who said, "This is my body, broken for you." And Samuel, he never forgot. Take a deep breath, rest here for a moment. Let the image settle. A quiet man, breaking bread, in the hush of morning, not hurrying, not needing, just remembering. There's something holy about waiting without proof, about doing the same gentle thing, even when no one sees. That's where God lives sometimes, in the unnoticed rituals, in the quiet places, in the faithful hands that keep moving even when the world doesn't applaud. Bedtime takeaway. You are not forgotten. God sees your quiet love. He will cover you with his feathers, and under his wings you will find refuge. Psalm 91:4. There were days when Samuel missed the sound of rain. It hadn't come in weeks. The earth outside his window had started to crack soft golden lines stretching through the soil, like the creases in his hands. The little herb garden he once tended with Mary was tired now. The thyme had gone dry, the rosemary brittle, but still, each morning, he set the kettle on the stove. Still, he laid the cloth across the table. Still, he whispered, "Thank you, Lord," before breaking the bread. Samuel wasn't trying to impress God. He wasn't bargaining for blessings. He was simply remembering, holding on, because once, long ago, when Mary was still alive, the rain had come like a song. He remembered one afternoon in particular. They were younger then, 45, maybe 50. The kitchen had been fuller. Laughter, dishes, flour scattered like snow on the counter. Mary had made soup. He had baked bread. And outside, the rain had poured down like grace, thick drops against the windows, steam rising from the teacups. The sound of Mary humming something about trust. Or was it peace? She had danced with him, barefoot, right there on the kitchen tile, just a sway, side to side, the bread resting in a towel, the rain clapping in rhythm. It wasn't a memory that made him ache. It was a memory that made him breathe. It reminded him that life had once overflowed. That love had been real and good and near. Take a deep breath. Rest here for a moment. Let the rain fall in your mind. Let it soften the dust. Let it remind you of someone you loved. Samuel didn't fear silence, but he listened carefully to it. Sometimes, in the quiet, he could almost hear her again, not in words, but in the peace that came when he sat still, in the warmth that settled over him when he wrapped his hands around a fresh mug of tea, in the whisper of the Lord, who never stopped dwelling with him. And even when the sky stayed dry, Samuel knew the rain of God's presence never truly ceased. It simply moved deeper into the heart. Bedtime takeaway. Even in the dry seasons, God's love still reigns within you. Do not forget to show hospitality to strangers, for by so doing, some have shown hospitality to angels without knowing it. Hebrews 13:2. The morning light came slowly, gray first, then blue, then gold. Samuel stood in the kitchen, palms open over the loaf. The crust had cooled. The bread, dense and warm, waited to be shared. He had just broken a piece small and tender when he heard it. A knock, soft, not rushed, not fearful, just present. Samuel hadn't heard a knock on that door in many weeks. Most folks in town thought he liked his solitude. And it was true, he did. But he also believed in open doors. He walked slowly, steadying himself with one hand on the table, the other brushing against the old wooden wall. When he opened the door, the morning wind slipped in first, carrying the faintest scent of rain far off. And there, standing quietly in the light, was a man he didn't recognize. Mid-30s, perhaps, a canvas satchel over his shoulder, clothes simple, boots dusty. But his face, it was calm, not tired, but not hurried either. He looked as though he had seen many roads, but still believed in kindness. "Good morning," the stranger said. Samuel nodded. "You're early." The man smiled. "So is the mercy of God." Samuel's eyes softened. "Would you like bread?" The man nodded gently. "I would be grateful." He stepped aside and motioned toward the small table by the window. There was only one chair. Samuel gestured for the man to take it, but the man shook his head. "Please," he said, "you sit. I'm here to rest beside you, not replace you." So they sat in silence, Samuel in the chair, the man resting lightly on a cushion on the floor. The morning settled around them like a shawl. They shared the bread, slowly, quietly. No need for stories at first. The man chewed thoughtfully, eyes watching the sky. Samuel poured tea. The kettle hissed and sighed. At last the man spoke. "Is this your daily practice?" he asked. Samuel smiled. Breaking bread? Yes. Why? Because Jesus did. There was a pause. Then the man nodded. It is a beautiful echo. Samuel looked at him. Are you a preacher? The man chuckled softly. No, just a pilgrim. Samuel didn't need to know more. He had known many kinds of people, some full of words, some full of soul. This one seemed full of God. Take a deep breath. Rest here for a moment. Imagine the warmth of tea, the comfort of fresh bread, and the presence of someone who doesn't rush you, someone who simply sits beside you and listens. The man stayed for about an hour. When he stood to go, he thanked Samuel. Your kitchen, he said, feels like a chapel. Samuel chuckled. Only because the Lord comes here, too. The man looked at him for a long moment, then nodded, as though that truth had found a home in his heart. When the door closed behind him, Samuel looked out the window. The clouds had begun to gather, thick, gentle, heavy with promise. He folded the cloth over the last piece of bread, and he whispered, Thank you for coming. Bedtime takeaway. Sometimes God visits in ways you do not expect. Be ready. With bread, you keep track of all my sorrows. You have collected all my tears in your bottle. You have recorded each one in your book. Psalm 56:8. There was a drawer beneath the table, old and quiet, its handle worn smooth. Samuel opened it slowly, as he did every Thursday morning. Inside were envelopes, some yellowed, some still white. A few had names. Most did not, but all of them had been written in Samuel's handwriting, gentle, leaning just slightly to the right. Letters written not to get a reply, but simply to offer something out into the world. He used to write them to Mary. After she passed, he wrote them to God. And sometimes, when his hands ached less, he wrote them to no one in particular, just someone who might need words. Words like, You are not forgotten. The night will pass. God is still near, even when you don't feel him. He would place the letters in the drawer, knowing they likely wouldn't go anywhere. It didn't matter to Samuel. The act of writing was the prayer. He imagined them as small boats, set loose in a river of grace. God knew where they needed to go. This morning, after the visitor had gone, Samuel felt stirred, not emotional, just tender, like someone had lit a lamp deep in his chest. He sat at the table again, drew a piece of paper toward him, and began to write. To the one who wonders if God still hears you. I don't know your name. I don't know what weighs on you tonight. But I know what silence feels like. I know what it is to sit at the same table, break the same bread, and still wonder if anyone sees you. But I also know God listens more closely in the quiet. He is not far. He is near as breath. He watches your shaking hands. He holds your forgotten prayers like pearls. You may feel alone, but there is a stranger who once came to my door, and I believe he came from the heart of God. I don't know if this letter will ever find you, but if it does, let it be a small whisper in your ear. You are not alone. You are deeply loved. Yours, under the same rainless sky. Samuel, take a deep breath. Rest here for a moment. Imagine writing to someone you'll never meet, but still believing it matters. That love can travel without stamps, without names, without needing to be seen. That afternoon, for the first time in years, Samuel folded the letter, sealed it gently, and walked down the lane to the little mailbox by the fence. He placed it inside no name, no return address, just the simple words in the corner, "For the one who needs hope." And as he turned back toward the house, he felt it. One soft drop, then another. The rain had finally come. Bedtime takeaway. Your love, even in silence, reaches farther than you know. Before they call, I will answer. While they are still speaking, I will hear. Isaiah 65:24. It rained softly through the night. Not the stormy kind, no thunder, no wind. Just the steady, tender kind that soaks the earth slowly, as if heaven were whispering with every drop. Samuel slept deeper than usual. His body, usually restless by midnight, found comfort in the rhythm on the roof. He didn't dream of anything remarkable, just light and the feeling of someone sitting nearby. When he woke, the sky was still dim. The kind of gray that comes just before dawn stretches fully into being. He wrapped his old wool sweater around his shoulders, boiled water for tea, and went to the window to greet the morning, like he always did. That's when he saw it. An envelope, tucked quietly on the outer sill, pale blue, slightly damp. No name. He blinked once, then again. No footsteps in the mud, no signs of a visitor. Just the envelope, waiting. He opened the window carefully. The hinges creaked. The cool air greeted him. He reached out with 2 fingers, steadying his wrist on the frame. The paper was soft with moisture, but the ink inside was clear. Dear Samuel, I read your letter. I don't know how it found me. I wasn't supposed to be here this long. I was just passing through trying to find something or leave something behind. I honestly didn't know which, but yesterday, I walked past a fence and saw a mailbox. I don't know why I opened it, but your words, they were the only thing that didn't ask anything of me. They didn't tell me to be strong, or to pray harder, or to smile. They just reminded me that I'm not lost to God. I sat by the road and cried for a long time, and for the first time in months, I felt held. Thank you for not forgetting people like me. Thank you for sitting at your table and writing into the silence. I'm going to try again, not all at once, but maybe I'll get there. If I walk slow, I don't have a name you'd know, but I'm someone's daughter. I'm someone who needed hope, and you gave it. May the Lord bless you and keep you. Love. A stranger beneath the same sky. Samuel didn't move for a long time. He just stood there, letter resting in his open palm, eyes soft, heart full. And outside the window, the rain continued its hymn. Take a deep breath. Rest here for a moment. Let yourself imagine receiving a letter you never expected, from someone you never met, who was changed by the kindness you almost forgot you gave. He placed the letter beside his Bible, not above it, not below, but next to it, as if it too was sacred. Then he sat down, broke the bread, and whispered, "Thank you for answering," before I even asked. Bedtime takeaway. God hears what your heart says even when you don't speak it aloud. The wilderness and the dry land shall be glad. The desert shall rejoice and blossom like the crocus. Isaiah 35:1. The sun came slowly that morning, peeking through the mist, like a child easing out of sleep. Samuel watched it from the kitchen window, tea in hand, letters still open beside the Bible. The rain had stopped sometime near dawn, leaving the world wrapped in a hush wet leaves, softened earth, and the scent of something new beginning. He hadn't stepped out into the yard in a while, but today, something drew him. He reached for his boots, the old leather pair Mary had once insisted he keep, even when they'd cracked at the toe. She said they made him look like a poet. The garden path was quiet, muddy in places, but passable. And as Samuel stepped past the rosemary bush, he saw it. It wasn't flashy, not a rose, not a bright bloom calling attention, just a small green shoot curled toward the sky, delicate, gentle, almost shy. It grew from the corner of the herb bed, a spot Mary had once cleared for wildflowers. He knelt slowly, one hand on his knee, the other brushing back the damp soil. There it was, lavender, tiny, barely formed, but unmistakable. She had planted it years ago, said the scent reminded her of quiet places, of God's nearness. It had withered after her passing, gone dry. He thought it had died completely. He never watered it, but now, after the long drought and one gentle rain, it was back. Samuel sat there, cross-legged on the earth, letting the coolness soak into his bones. He didn't speak. He didn't need to. The moment itself was a kind of prayer. Take a deep breath. Rest here for a moment. Close your eyes and picture it, the small green shoot that no one expected, rising quietly through broken ground. It doesn't shout. It doesn't beg. It just returns. Because grace always finds a way to grow again. Later that morning, Samuel brought a small stool and placed it by the wildflower bed. He sat beside the lavender shoot, just watching it sway in the breeze. He whispered to it, as if Mary could hear. "You didn't forget, did you?" And then he looked up at the sky, smiled, and added, "Neither did he. Bedtime takeaway. Even what feels forgotten can bloom again in God's time. Your word is a lamp to my feet and a light to my path." Psalm 119:105. The sky was clean that afternoon, washed clear by the rain. Everything shimmered softly. Even the wind seemed gentler, like it knew not to interrupt. Samuel sat at the kitchen table again. The lavender shoot still danced in his memory. But something else stirred now, like a quiet tug in his chest. He reached for the other Bible, Mary's. It had rested on the highest shelf for years. She had always read it aloud, especially the Psalms. He used to listen from across the room, pretending not to, even though he memorized the rhythm of her voice. He pulled the Bible down slowly, brushing off a fine layer of dust with his sleeve. The cover was worn soft, corners bent, edges thin. When he opened it, a dried flower fell into his lap, pressed carefully between the pages of Isaiah. Its petals were almost transparent now, but still, it carried the memory of hands that once held it gently. He turned the pages with care, psalm after psalm, underline after underline, little notes in the margin. Then, halfway through Psalm 62, his fingers paused. There, nestled between the verses, was a small, folded scrap of paper, old, yellowed, still carrying her handwriting. He unfolded it slowly. The ink was faded, but clear. "Samuel, if you find this, It means you've made it through something hard, or something long, or something lonely. And I just want to say I knew you would. I know how you sit at the table, break the bread, wait by the window. I know the way you carry silence like it's a gift. You may feel empty sometimes, but I've never known someone more full of God than you. So don't stop. Don't stop breaking the bread. Don't stop waiting. He's with you. Even if I'm not. The note trembled gently in his hands. He let out a breath he didn't know he'd been holding. And then quietly, reverently, he read it again, word by word, line by line, as if she were right there in the room. Take a deep breath. Rest here for a moment. Think of someone you loved, who left you a whisper of their soul, a word, a letter, a memory that still opens like a door when everything else feels closed. Samuel didn't cry. He smiled, because the letter wasn't a goodbye. It was a reminder that nothing spoken in love ever disappears. It just waits for the right time to be heard again. He placed the note back between the pages, right beside this verse. Truly, my soul finds rest in God. My salvation comes from Him. Psalm 62:1. And he whispered, I hear you. Bedtime. Takeaway. What is written in love will always find its way back to you. I lay down and slept. I woke again, for the Lord sustained me. Psalm 3:5. That night, the wind moved gently through the trees. The moon, half hidden, floated behind a veil of clouds. Samuel finished his tea, folded the linen cloth, and let his hands rest on the table for a long while. The house was quiet, but not empty. Something lingered. Not quite memory, not quite presence, just peace. He whispered a simple prayer. No requests, no words at all, just a breath given back to God. Then he turned off the light and went to bed, and in sleep, he dreamed. But it was not like other dreams. It didn't feel scattered or strange. It felt whole. He was walking through a field. The grass was tall and golden, like late summer. Mist curled low along the ground, and the air smelled of lavender. In the distance, he saw a figure. She was sitting beneath a tree. He knew, before he even reached her Mary. Her hair was tucked behind her ears the way she always did when she baked. She wore the soft blue dress he'd forgotten he remembered. And her eyes, oh, her eyes, they still carried that knowing light. Hello, Sam, she said. He laughed, not from surprise, but from recognition. You waited for me, he said. Mary tilted her head. I always wait for you. He sat beside her. No need to speak yet. The tree above them whispered in the breeze. The leaves shimmered like they were listening. And then another figure appeared. Not hurried, not loud, just walking slowly across the field, feet brushing the grass, clothed in simple light. When he reached them, he didn't say anything. He simply sat down between them, and they all looked out toward the hills where the sun was rising but not yet risen, where everything shimmered in promise. Jesus turned and looked at Samuel, not with glowing eyes or shining splendor, but with deep, quiet kindness, like someone who had walked every mile with him, even the ones Samuel thought he walked alone. And he said, I kept every letter. I caught every tear. I was always just behind the door. Take a deep breath. Rest here for a moment. Imagine a place outside of time, a golden field, a friend, a savior, and the silence between them not heavy, but holy. Samuel didn't ask questions. He didn't need answers. He just sat there, between love remembered and love eternal. And when he woke as the morning light touched his cheek, he whispered one word: soon. Bedtime takeaway. Heaven is not far, and Jesus is already waiting in the place where love continues. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I shall dwell in the house of the Lord forever. Psalm 23:6. The morning after the dream, Samuel moved more slowly than usual, not from weariness, but from fullness. It felt like he was walking through a blessing that had not yet faded, like dew still clung to the inside of his chest. He baked the bread, humming one of Mary's old songs as the dough rose. He folded the cloth, lit a small candle just this once, and sat again at the kitchen table by the window. There was a quietness in the room that was not empty. It was more like stillness before a curtain lifts, or the final silence before a choir sings. And then Samuel took out one last piece of paper, clean, uncreased. He uncapped the pen, the same pen he had used for decades, its ink faint, but still willing. And he began to write, "To the one who will sit here after me, welcome. If you are reading this, then this kitchen has somehow made its way into your life. Maybe you came looking for something, or maybe you just wandered in. That's how God often works. This table has seen many mornings, many prayers, and a great deal of quiet bread breaking. It may look ordinary, but I've met Jesus here, again and again, not in visions, not with trumpets, but in the rising dough, in the whisper of wind through the window, in the smile of a stranger. If you ever feel weary, sit here, warm the tea, break the bread, and remember, someone sat here before you. Someone believed God would come, and he did. He always does. Samuel. He folded the letter gently, slid it beneath the linen cloth, placed a small sprig of dried lavender on top. Then he looked out the window. The clouds were soft again. The breeze was full of light. The rosemary bush had new green tips at the end of its branches. He whispered, "I think the time is near, not as fear, not as farewell, but as arrival. Take a deep breath, rest here for a moment. There is something holy about preparing a space for someone else, leaving behind comfort, like a lamp in the window, like a table already set, like a prayer already waiting." That evening, Samuel sat once more by the fire. The candle still flickered beside him, the Bible still open to Psalm 23. And as the sun slipped behind the hills, he whispered the words he'd said 1,000 times. "Come, Lord Jesus." Then he closed his eyes. Bedtime takeaway. Your faith prepares the way for someone else's peace. I have loved you with an everlasting love. I have drawn you with unfailing kindness. Jeremiah 31:3. He didn't plan to stop. The young man had been walking most of the morning, hands in his pockets, backpack sagging slightly, heart somewhere between anger and fatigue. He wasn't running, but he wasn't exactly arriving either. He was just in between. He didn't have a destination, only a need to move, to keep going, to stay ahead of whatever ache had started chasing him 2 towns back. That's when he saw it. A small house at the edge of a field, nothing special. Just old wood, a sloped roof, and a little garden that looked like someone had once cared for it with patient hands. He stopped. Something about it, a flicker of candlelight in the window, or maybe the way the wind moved the lavender bush near the porch. It felt like the house was waiting. The front door was slightly ajar. He hesitated, stepped closer, knocked once out of politeness, though something in him already knew no one would answer. Inside was quiet, but warm, not abandoned, not forgotten, just still. He stepped in gently. The air smelled of bread, faint, old, but comforting. There was a table by the window, a cloth folded neatly, a single loaf, half covered, and on the table, a letter, not sealed, not addressed, just waiting. He sat down slowly, placed his hands on the edge of the table, and began to read, line by line, word by word. The quiet in the room seemed to lean in as he read, and when he reached the final line, he always does, he swallowed something in his throat that had no name but everything to do with hope. He leaned back in the chair. He didn't cry, he didn't pray, not yet, but he stayed. And when he rose again, he folded the letter as it had been, placed it back beneath the linen cloth, and opened the Bible beside it. He didn't know where to begin, so he opened to the middle. The pages fell to Psalm 27. The Lord is my light and my salvation, whom shall I fear? He didn't speak the words aloud, but he heard them, and for the first time in weeks, his shoulders softened. He found a stool by the garden, sat near the lavender. The wind moved slowly through the trees. Something sacred hung in the air, not seen, not named, but deeply known. He would stay for the night. Just one night, he told himself. But the next morning, he baked a new loaf of bread. Take a deep breath. Rest here for a moment. Even when you feel lost, there is a door already open, a seat already pulled out, a place that has quietly waited for you all along. Later that day, he found a pen, took a scrap of paper from the drawer, and he wrote, "To the next one who finds this place, you're safe here. Someone waited before you, and someone will wait after you. You are not alone." He slid the note beneath the cloth, just beside Samuel's. Bedtime takeaway. The love of God echoes through generations, gently calling each heart home. The Lord will watch over your coming and going both now and forevermore. Psalm 121:8. Years passed. The house never sold, not because no one wanted it, but because something quiet protected it. Somehow, the realtors forgot to list it. The letters were always misplaced. When people came near, they paused, then walked on, not out of fear, but reverence. The little house by the field became something whispered about. Locals said it felt holy. Some called it the bread house. Others simply said, "There's a place out there where the peace is different." And once in a while, someone would find it. They didn't always know why they came. A woman who had just lost her husband, a man weary from too much noise, a college student who wasn't sure if God still listened. Each one, for reasons they couldn't explain, stumbled onto the path, walked up the porch, and found the door slightly open. Always warm inside, always quiet, a table by the window, a loaf of bread, a letter, and each one left something behind. Not much. A note, a prayer, a dried flower on the sill, sometimes a jar of honey, sometimes a verse written in pencil in the margins of Mary's Bible. None of it was organized, none of it planned, but the house began to hold the quiet footprints of the faithful, each one passing through, each one becoming a part of something far bigger than they knew. There was never a caretaker, and yet the bread was never moldy, the candles never fully melted, the lavender always returned in spring, and the fire, somehow, always seemed to have just recently burned. Take a deep breath. Rest here for a moment. Close your eyes and imagine it, a place that holds peace like breath. A place made ready for the weary, where no one is judged, no one is hurried, and no one is forgotten. One foggy morning, a child wandered onto the path. Her parents, just up the hill, followed quickly behind. They didn't know what drew her, only that she kept walking towards something like it had called her name. When they reached the house, the door was ajar, and inside, the fire was warm. They found her sitting at the table, smiling softly, as if someone had just left. She turned and said, "Jesus made me a place," and on the table a single piece of fresh bread, still warm. Bedtime takeaway. God prepares a place for every soul that longs for rest. In my Father's house are many rooms. I go to prepare a place for you. John 14:2. The story doesn't really end here, because the house still stands. Maybe not on any map, maybe not in the way you'd expect, but it's real. It's the place where memory and mercy meet, where silence is not emptiness, but presence, where bread is still warm, the window still open, and the seat beside the table still waiting for you. Perhaps you've been walking for a long time. Perhaps your soul is tired. Perhaps you've wondered if anyone sees the quiet love you offer, the prayers you whisper in the dark, the way you keep showing up even when no one notices. God sees. He always has. And somewhere, in a place not far from here, there is a room that holds your name, a place of gentleness, a table set in your honor, a Savior who kneels beside you and says, "Rest now. I've prepared this for you." Take a deep breath. Rest here. Truly. You don't have to keep striving. You don't have to prove anything. You don't have to be strong tonight. Just come. Be still. Let the bread of life be broken gently before you. Let the candle flicker in the hush. Let your heart lean against the one who never left your side. Maybe you won't remember all the details of this story in the morning. That's okay. But if one part stays with you, let it be this. There is a table where you are known, a place where your soul is held, a warmth that never fades, and a Jesus who waits not with impatience, but with love, always love. Final bedtime takeaway. You are not forgotten. You are deeply, eternally, forever loved, and you have a place at the table of the King. Rest here for a moment. Let what you've heard settle gently into your heart. Maybe a scene still lingers, a table, a letter, a candle left burning. You don't need to hold it all. Just breathe. And now, when you're ready, we'll begin the second story. Another quiet journey, another reminder that even when life feels small and hidden, God's presence is never far. Let us begin again, slowly, softly. Her name was Elaine, 81, soft-spoken, the kind of woman who spoke slowly, not because she forgot, but because she noticed things most people missed. She lived alone in a small home at the edge of town, not far from the woods, close enough to the church to hear the bells on Sunday, but not so close that people dropped by often. That was fine with her. She preferred the quiet. There was one ritual she had never abandoned. Each evening, just before twilight folded the sky into blue, she lit a candle. Not for light. She had lamps. Not for decoration. She liked things simple. She lit it just in case someone was lost, in case someone walked by, in case anyone might need to know that there was still warmth somewhere. Elaine had started the practice many years ago, when her husband was still alive, when their son was overseas, when her kitchen was still filled with the sound of 2 spoons in 1 bowl of soup. Even after they were both gone, one to war, one to heaven, she kept the candle lit. Hope, she said once, is a little like a flame you don't snuff out, even when the room is empty. Each night, after the candle was lit, she would sit in the rocking chair by the window, cup of warm milk in hand, her Bible open on her lap. She didn't always read it. Sometimes she just rested her hand there on the worn leather cover, like a friend she didn't need to talk to. Take a deep breath. Rest here for a moment. Can you picture it? A single candle, a gentle woman, a Bible that knows her touch. Even the angels must have leaned in to listen. Elaine believed in the nearness of Jesus, not in the loud way, not in the everyday miracles kind of way, but in the still, quiet knowing that when she whispered his name, he always answered without sound. And that sometimes was more than enough. Bedtime, takeaway. Even your smallest faithfulness lights the way for someone in the dark. The Lord is close to the brokenhearted and saves those who are crushed in spirit. Psalm 34:18. It had rained all afternoon. One of those soft, cold rains that soaks everything through, not harsh, just persistent. Elaine didn't mind. Rain, to her, was God's way of slowing the world down. A reminder that not everything needed to bloom quickly. She had lit the candle a bit earlier than usual that day. The sky had gone dim sooner, and her knees had told her a storm was coming. She placed the candle in the usual spot, the small wooden table by the window, just high enough to be seen from the road, just low enough to warm the room with its golden hush. Then she made tea, poured it into her favorite mug, the one with the faded bluebirds, wrapped herself in a shawl, and sat quietly, listening to the ticking of the old clock, to the gentle tap of rain on the glass, to her own breath, moving in and out like prayer. She was not expecting anything, and yet she always left space for the unexpected. It was near dusk when she heard it, a soft, hesitant knock, not forceful, not desperate, just human. Elaine didn't startle. She rose slowly, one hand on the arm of the chair, the other on her cane, and walked to the door. Outside stood a man, younger than her, but not young, maybe late 40s, wearing a coat that had stopped keeping him dry hours ago. His hair was soaked, shoes muddy, but his eyes held something she recognized. Not fear, not danger, just sorrow. and the weight of too many silent miles. "Evening," she said gently. The man nodded. "I'm sorry to bother you. He didn't finish. Elaine looked at him kindly, then opened the door a bit wider. "You look cold. Come in." He stepped inside like someone who hadn't been inside in a while. Not just a house, but warmth. Welcome. A room, prepared. He looked at the candle first, then the table, then at her. "You live alone." "I do," she said, "but I'm not lonely." He didn't ask what she meant. Somehow, he already knew. She handed him a towel, made him tea, placed an extra log on the fire. They didn't talk much, but they didn't need to. After a while, he spoke. "I was walking," he said. "I didn't know where. Just walking." Elaine nodded. "I saw the light in your window. It was the only thing I'd seen in hours. It looked like it was meant for me." She smiled softly. "It was." Take a deep breath. Rest here for a moment. Picture it now. 2 strangers, 1 candle, a room where nothing dramatic happens, only the holy hush of kindness being poured out, like warm tea on a cold night. They sat for a long time, until the rain softened, until the fire dimmed, until the man's hand stopped shaking. Elaine didn't ask his story, but when he left, hours later, he turned back at the door and whispered, "Thank you for waiting, even though you didn't know I was coming." She smiled. "I did know. I just didn't know your name." Bedtime takeaway. Someone may find their way because you stayed faithful with a small light. Before a word is on my tongue, you, Lord, know it completely. Psalm 139:4. 3 days passed. The rain stopped, but the chill remained. Elaine didn't mind the cold. She had her shawl, her quiet routines, and the candle. She lit it again every evening, just as she had for years. No one else knocked, but she still watched the road. Not in impatience, but in expectation. There's a difference. On the 4th morning, she opened her mailbox. There wasn't usually much a flyer, a church bulletin, sometimes a coupon for a grocery store she no longer visited. But today, there was a single envelope, cream-colored, no return address. Her name written in a careful, unfamiliar hand. She stood by the mailbox for a moment, letter in hand, the morning air brushing gently across her cheeks. Then she went back inside. She sat at the table by the candle, unlit now, but still holding the scent of yesterday's flame. Her hands trembled slightly as she opened the letter, not from fear, just a sense that something sacred was folded inside. "Dear Elaine, you don't know me, and I don't know if you even remember me. I was the one who came on the rainy night. I didn't stay long, but your candle did something to me. I had walked for miles that day, not just on roads, but through grief, through regret, through the kind of quiet that doesn't feel holy, just heavy. I had decided to give up, not on life, maybe, but on hoping. And then I saw your window. 1 small light, 1 open door, 1 cup of tea. It saved me." Elaine paused. Her eyes filled, but she didn't brush the tears away. She let them fall softly, like prayers she didn't know she'd been holding. She read on. "I didn't have words that night, but I do now. Thank you for being the kind of person who lights a candle for no reason, or maybe for every reason. I'm not sure where I'm going next, but I know now that God is not far. He wears shawls, He makes tea. He leaves the porch light on. I don't know how to repay you. I'm not sure you want that, but I'll carry what you gave me and I'll pass it on. Wherever I go, I'll light something too. With all my heart, a stranger you welcomed. Elaine folded the letter slowly, held it against her chest. Not in nostalgia, but in quiet awe. She whispered something very soft, so soft. Even she could barely hear it. Thank you, Lord. You always find a way. Take a deep breath. Rest here for a moment. Imagine someone thanking you for something you almost forgot you did. Something small, something kind, something ordinary that God used to rescue a soul. That evening, Elaine lit the candle again, but this time, she placed the letter beside it, and she smiled at the window, not to see who was coming, but just to say, I'm still here. Bedtime. Takeaway. Your kindness travels further than you ever see, and God never lets it return empty. I will remember the deeds of the Lord. Yes, I will remember your miracles of long ago. Psalm 77:11. That night, sleep came slowly, not because Elaine was restless, but because her heart was too full to close. She lay in bed, hands gently folded across her chest, eyes turned toward the ceiling. The letter rested on the nightstand, its presence still humming softly in the room. Outside, the candle in the window continued to burn, casting its familiar golden shimmer along the kitchen walls. And as she lay there, a memory rose. Not sharp, not loud, just steady, like the tide returning to shore. A night from many years ago, long before her hair had turned silver, before her bones had grown still. She had been 22, newly married, just weeks after her mother's funeral. Her husband was asleep in the next room, exhausted from working the fields, and Elaine had gone out for a walk, because grief does not always honor the clock. It was late, chilly. She had wrapped herself in a coat 2 sizes too big, and walked without thinking, down the road, past the fields, past the small country church, and into the woods. She didn't mean to cry, but the tears came anyway. She didn't yell, didn't pray, just stood among the trees, aching. Her mother had always said, when you don't know what to do, just be still. The Lord finds still things. But Elaine had felt forgotten that night, until she saw it. Through the trees, far in the distance, a single flicker. A light in a window? Nothing remarkable. Not a lighthouse. Not a beam from heaven. Just a soft glow that didn't go out. She walked toward it. Not for help. Not for conversation. Just because something inside her said, go there. Just sit near it. So she did. She never knocked on the door. She just sat on a small rock by the edge of the fence and watched the candle burn from the safety of the shadows. It was enough. Enough to remind her that light still lived in the world. That someone, somewhere, had lit a candle not knowing she'd need it. And the next morning she walked home. Take a deep breath. Rest here for a moment. Let this memory be your own for a moment. The night, the ache, and then the flicker, the glow of something steady, something still burning, just when you needed it most. Elaine smiled softly in the dark. The Lord had not only remembered her, He had allowed her to become for others what someone had once been for her. A quiet light, a candle in the window. She whispered aloud into the stillness. You always complete the circle, Lord, always. Then she turned over slowly, pulled the blanket up to her shoulders, and closed her eyes. The candle kept burning. Bedtime takeaway. God never wastes the light you once needed. He'll let you pass it on. Let your light so shine before others that they may see your good works and glorify your Father in heaven. Matthew 5:16. It was a clear afternoon, bright but not harsh. The kind of light that seemed to bless rather than expose. Elaine had just finished folding a basket of warm laundry. She always said folding was its own kind of prayer, a way of smoothing out the wrinkles in her soul while tending to the ordinary holiness of socks and towels. The candle, unlit for now, still sat on the windowsill. She didn't light it until evening, but that afternoon, she found herself humming. Just a quiet tune, no words. Something old, something kind. Then a knock, not uncertain, not desperate, just gentle. She opened the door slowly. There, on the porch, stood a young woman, late 20s, maybe, wool sweater, messy bun, eyes wide, and something between nervousness and longing sitting quietly on her face. Miss Elaine, she said softly. Elaine smiled. Yes, dear. I hope this isn't strange. I come to the church. I sit in the back row. I've seen you there every Sunday for years now. I think. Elaine tilted her head. I didn't know you'd noticed. The young woman took a breath. I always notice you. You sit still. You bow your head slow. You smile at people when they don't know anyone sees it. She paused. And you always light a candle at home. People talk about it. Elaine chuckled. They do, only in the kindest way. They say, that woman down by the wood, she always has a light on, even when nobody comes. The young woman shifted her weight, looking down at her shoes. I guess I just wanted to ask. She looked up again. How do you live like that? Elaine didn't answer right away. She opened the door wider and gestured toward the kitchen. Come in, sweetheart. Let's have some tea. Then I'll tell you. They sat at the small wooden table, 2 mugs, 2 hands around them. The candle sat between them, still unlit, but very much glowing. Elaine began slowly. I wasn't always peaceful, she said. There were years I chased everything, and years I lost everything. The young woman listened, eyes soft. Elaine continued. But somewhere along the way, I stopped trying to make peace and started welcoming it. Like an old friend, take a deep breath, rest here for a moment. Imagine 2 generations, a table, and no hurry. Wisdom not poured out like lecture, but passed gently, like steam from one mug to another. I light the candle, Elaine said, because someone once lit it for me. I live quietly because I know Jesus walks softly. She leaned forward slightly. But don't confuse quiet with small. God's work is never small, even when it feels invisible. The young woman wiped her eye. I think I want to be someone who lights candles too. Elaine smiled. You already are. You came here, didn't you? They sat a while longer, and when the shadows lengthened, Elaine lit the candle. For both of them now. For the road ahead, bedtime takeaway. Your light may seem small, but it's already helping someone find their way. Teach us to number our days, that we may gain a heart of wisdom. Psalm 90:12. It began with the teacups. Elaine had always kept them neatly arranged, a set of 4, each with soft blue flowers around the rim. One morning, as she dusted them gently, she paused at the second one from the left. There was a small crack now, hairline, barely visible, but there, nonetheless. She held it in her hands for a long time, not out of sadness, just noticing. She placed it back in the cupboard, but the moment stayed with her. That afternoon, she walked slowly through the house, not for any particular reason, just listening to the quiet creak of the floor, to the gentle hum of the old refrigerator, to her own breath in the rooms she had known for decades, and she felt it, a kind of release, not a farewell, not yet, but a loosening, as though the walls were whispering, "When it's time, we'll be ready." That evening, after lighting the candle, Elaine took out a small notebook. She had always loved writing lists. They made her feel like she was tucking peace into corners. She titled the first page, "For the One Who Comes After," and beneath it, she began writing. "The good tea is in the back cabinet. The old rocking chair by the window is the best seat in the world. The Bible belonged to my mother, then to me. I hope it belongs to someone gentle next. There's extra yarn under the bed, and lavender sachets in the top drawer. Light the candle around 5. It doesn't matter the season. The light still matters." She paused, then added, "You don't have to believe everything yet. Just sit still. God comes slowly, like light at dawn, but he always comes. Take a deep breath, rest here for a moment. Imagine preparing your home not to leave, but to bless, to make a place that says, 'I was here, and it mattered, and I believe someone else will need this peace, too.'" Over the next few days, Elaine made little changes. She laundered the spare blanket, sharpened the old pencils in the drawer, and left a note beside the Bible. "This has comforted more tears than I can count. If your hands are shaking, open to the Psalms." She didn't tell anyone she was doing this. She didn't feel the need to. She was not rushing death. She was simply making room for whatever God wanted next. And the candle, she kept lighting it, not with more urgency, but with deeper stillness, because she knew someone would need it. Soon, bedtime takeaway. Preparing your life as a gift is a quiet form of worship. From the lips of children and infants, you, Lord, have called forth praise. Psalm 8:2. It was a Saturday morning in early spring. The earth was soft again. Rain had passed, and little green things were poking through the garden bed near the porch. Elaine was sitting on the front steps, a blanket wrapped around her knees, her hands folded in her lap. She wasn't doing anything, really. Just listening, watching the clouds move slowly, waiting for nothing in particular. That's when she heard it, a small voice, not calling, just humming, off key, sweet, sincere. Then, through the hedgerow at the edge of the yard, a child appeared, a girl, 7 or 8, maybe. Hair in 2 braids, shoes untied, eyes wide like the sky was always brand new. She froze when she saw Elaine. "I'm sorry," She said, "I wasn't trying to bother you. I just..." She looked down at her scuffed shoes. "I saw the candle." Elaine smiled, lifting a hand gently. "You're not bothering me, sweetheart." The girl took a step closer, then another, until she stood at the edge of the porch. "Why do you light it?" she asked. Elaine didn't answer right away. Instead, she patted the spot beside her. "Would you like to sit?" The girl nodded. She climbed up the steps and tucked herself beside Elaine, as if they had done this every morning for years. Elaine looked out toward the trees before answering. "I light it," she said slowly, "because someone might be walking by who needs to know they aren't alone." The girl tilted her head. "But how do you know someone's coming?" Elaine smiled. "I don't. That's what makes it faith." They sat in silence for a while. The girl's feet dangled. Elaine stayed firmly planted. Then the girl whispered something very small. "I think my dad is sad." He doesn't say it, but he forgets to smile a lot. Would the candle help him, too? Elaine turned gently toward her. "Yes, darling, especially him. Take a deep breath. Rest here for a moment. Let your heart soften." A child, unsure how to help someone she loves. A woman, steady in her kindness. And a candle still glowing, still waiting. Sometimes the most healing thing we can do is just be the light that stays on. The girl reached into her coat pocket, pulled out a crumpled leaf. "I found this morning. I was going to keep it, but I think it belongs here." She placed it on the porch, right beneath the candle. A small offering, quiet, unwrapped, holy. Elaine whispered, "Thank you." The girl stood up, waved, and disappeared back through the trees. And in the hush that followed, Elaine closed her eyes and breathed in the sweetness of what had just happened. That evening, when she lit the candle, she placed the leaf in a small jar beside it, a reminder that sometimes even the smallest hearts carry questions that lead us straight to God. Bedtime takeaway. The light you keep burning may be guiding someone you'll never see. Even to your old age and gray hairs, I am He. I am He who will sustain you. I have made you, and I will carry you. Isaiah 46:4. The days grew longer. The sun lingered a little later across the floorboards. The air was gentler. The birdsong returned. Elaine noticed everything, but she also noticed what was quieter inside herself. She began to rise a little slower, took more pauses between movements, needed a second hand to steady her cup. There was no fear in it, no grief, just a deep recognition. Her body was asking her to rest. She began napping in the afternoons, always in the same chair by the window. Blanket folded just so. Bible resting open on her lap, even if unread. And the candle still faithfully lit each evening now seemed even softer in its glow. She began to write less, but her silence became more filled with prayer. She no longer walked far from the house, but her thoughts stretched further than ever. One afternoon, she whispered aloud, "Lord, I think I'm getting ready." There was no answer from the room, but there was peace, thick as honey, warm as wool, still as a lullaby. Elaine began writing one final note, not for anyone in particular, and yet for everyone. She tucked it beside the candle. If you're reading this, it means I'm no longer here in the way you might expect. But I promise, I haven't gone far. My hope more than anything is that this little house felt like a whisper from God, that you found tea here, or peace, or just a breath you didn't know you were allowed to take. I've known sorrow here, but even more, I've known the Lord. So if you feel lost, sit, light the candle, breathe. He is near, always near. Take a deep breath, rest here for a moment. Not every departure feels like leaving. Some feel like becoming part of the light. Elaine wasn't gone. She had simply stepped into the room next door, the room without clocks, without aches, without goodbyes. That evening, when her hands trembled too much to strike the match, she whispered instead, "Jesus, would you light it for me tonight?" And in that holy hush, the candle flickered. Just enough, just in time. Bedtime takeaway, you can rest. God will keep the flame burning. Precious in the sight of the Lord is the death of his faithful servants. Psalm 116:15. It was a quiet morning. The kind of morning when everything feels paused, even the birds seem to sing in softer tones. Even the wind took its time moving through the trees. The young woman from the church, her name was Clara, had been thinking of Elaine all week. Something gentle had pressed on her heart, a nudge too soft to ignore. So she made a small basket fresh bread, a jar of honey, and a folded note, and walked the familiar path through the woods toward the little home with the candle in the window. As she rounded the curve in the trail, she saw it. The house stood still, as always. The porch swept. The curtain slightly parted, and in the window, the candle still glowing, even though the sun had already risen, even though it was far past morning. Clara smiled first, then slowly, she frowned, because something in the stillness felt deeper today. Not heavy, not wrong, just full. She knocked once, waited. No answer. She tried the handle. The door was unlocked just as Elaine always said it would be in case someone needed comfort. Clara stepped in quietly, like someone entering a chapel. The air was warm, but still. A faint scent of lavender hung in the air. On the table sat the candle, burning low but steady. Beside it, Elaine's Bible, a teacup, half full, and a letter neatly folded. Clara's eyes filled with tears before she even read a word. She didn't need a note to know, but she read it anyway. "My dear, if you are here now, then you already know. I have gone home, but don't think of it as far. I just walked into another room, where the candle never dims. Keep the kettle warm, keep the seat by the window, and keep lighting the light. Someone else will need it. All my love, Elaine." Clara sat in the chair Elaine once filled. Let the light fall gently on her hands. She wept softly, not from despair, but from holy gratitude. She was not alone in the room. She was wrapped in the same quiet presence Elaine had always spoken of, but never tried to explain. Take a deep breath. Rest here for a moment. Let yourself feel it, the love that doesn't end. The kind that remains in teacups and books, in windows and folded blankets, in notes and remembered prayers. The love of a life poured out gently, but never gone. Clara didn't blow out the candle. She let it burn all day. And when evening came, she lit a second one just beside it, because now the light was hers to tend. Bedtime, take away. What is passed on in love never fades. It multiplies. The light shines in the darkness, and the darkness has not overcome it. John 1:5. Years had passed. The house still stood, not polished, not pristine, but cared for, tended, loved. The garden had grown fuller, its edges soft with wildflowers that came and went like old friends. The porch still creaked gently under the weight of quiet footsteps, and every evening without fail, a candle still burned in the window. Clara had lived there now for some time, not out of obligation, but out of calling. She had taken up the rhythm Elaine left behind, a gentle liturgy of warm tea, quiet prayer, and open doors. She didn't try to be Elaine. She simply let herself be a vessel for the same light. One autumn evening, a little girl walked by the fence with her mother. They weren't from the area, just passing through, looking for a place to stretch their legs, to breathe. The girl stopped suddenly, tugging at her mother's sleeve. "Mommy," she whispered. "Look." Her mother followed her gaze. The house, the soft glow in the window, the hush that wrapped the air like a warm blanket. "Can we go see the girl?" asked. Her mother hesitated, not wanting to intrude, but something about the house felt like it was expecting them. So they walked up the path. Clara had already seen them coming. She was standing just inside the doorway, hands gently clasped, as if holding a prayer that had just been answered. She opened the door before they could knock. "Hello," she said softly. "Would you like to come in for a moment?" Inside, the candle glowed beside the Bible. The table was already set for 3. The mother looked puzzled. "We didn't call ahead or anything." Clara just smiled. "You were expected." The little girl sat in the rocking chair by the window. Her legs didn't reach the floor. Her eyes sparkled with curiosity. "Why do you light that candle?" she asked. Clara leaned down beside her. "Because someone once lit it for me, and someone once lit it for her, and one day, maybe you'll light it for someone, too." The girl nodded slowly, then looked back at the flickering flame. "It looks like it's waiting for something." Clara smiled. "It always is. Take a deep breath. Rest here for a moment. Let this story settle in your chest. Let it warm the quiet places in you, because you are part of it, too. Someone's light brought you here, and someone maybe you will carry it forward." That night, as the sky turned indigo, the mother and daughter stood by the fence once more. The girl looked back at the house, eyes wide. "Mommy, can we light a candle when we get home?" Her mother nodded. "Yes, sweetheart. We can." Final bedtime. Takeaway: light never ends. It only moves from hand to hand, from heart to heart, from one quiet soul to the next, until the whole world glows with the nearness of God. You've made it to the end, beloved. Not just the end of a story, but the edge of rest. Let these final moments wrap around you like a gentle blanket of grace. You don't need to remember every word. You don't need to hold every truth. Just this: God is near, always near, in the silence, in the waiting, in the light you keep burning. Close your eyes now. Let the peace of Christ guard your heart and your breath as you drift into His arms. Sleep well tonight. You are safe. You are known. And you are loved.